Gaurav, stay on with me because Shiv, here the question is, he spoke of three key principles: respect the line of actual control, no change in status quo, all agreements. He's making it on record because he's spoken in the parliament that there were treaties, there are agreements, and it is China just unwilling to accept any of it.
That's right. He's specifically named the 1993 and 1996 border tranquility agreements between India and China, which have basically been the bedrock of the peace that has lasted all these years. Rajnath Singh was very specific in terms of the agreement. He also spoke about all of the meetings. He briefly touched upon his exchange with his Chinese counterpart in Moscow last week as well. So he did touch upon some of the specifics. He stayed away from speaking about the exact friction points apart from Gomkala and
Why do you think
Gogra
that
Post. I think because, like Gaurav absolutely rightly said, Pooja, this is a fluid situation. Yes. China is going to be hanging on to every word. It's going to be looking for something to latch on to in terms of saying, hey, there's an admission that the Indians have actually crossed the line of actual control. So so Rajnath Singh has obviously tactically left out the specifics of the South Pangong area where the Indian army has taken a lot of preemptive actions, and I'm not surprised by that at all. But I think the message is very, very clear at this stage. I think many things are off the table. At this point, it is about the possibility that talks can still resolve a difficult situation. Winter is going to begin next month. Time is running out as far as the most hostile weather that's available on Earth. So in many ways, the window is closing for a reasonable settlement of this issue. And like you pointed out, Pooja, status quo, that remains the big focus here.
Please stay on with me. I want to just go across to the Parliament now. Our National Affairs editor Rahul Srivastav is also joining us from outside the premises. Rahul, it was the opposition demanding a debate. So debate is not happening, but I could see at some level some noise coming out from the House, but it's not going to lead to any uproar. Should we say that the opposition for now has accepted this timely statement from the Defence Minister?
No, Pooja. I don't think the opposition has accepted. I think it was a procedural element that the government wanted to utilize the early part of the session to provide certain amount of fodder in terms of a statement by the Defence Minister on what exactly was the status. Because after all, it is mandamus on the government that if there has been a serious development in terms of a standoff like what is happening in the Ladakh region, and also that there have been meetings on it between the Defence Minister, his Chinese counterpart, the External Affairs Minister and his Chinese counterpart, then the Parliament needs to be informed what has happened. A debate might take time, but the government had to come clean as far as the larger status and the responsibility of the government is concerned. And that is why it was supposed to be a statement. Though the opposition did expect certain degree of clarifications, which did not happen. And what government sources are saying, it's a very difficult position for any clarification, because once a question is made in terms of a clarification and the government does not respond, because there are certain strategic details involved in it, it can be problematic as far as the wider effort of the national government at the border LAC is concerned. But one thing which is very clear now from what Rajnath Singh has said, that if you see when he's talked about, as Shiv was also indicating, that the basic idea that India is not the transgressor, it is China which is breaking the protocols and the agreements, 93, 96 and others, and is creating points of friction. India wants peace. That point was conveyed to the Chinese defense counterpart, and the fact that India remains committed to protecting its territorial integrity and sovereignty.
Yes.
This point was conveyed to the Chinese. The government has put it back on the table because the opposition was wanting to know whether there has been a meek surrender by India as far as the territories is concerned, or the conversation or the dialogue with China is concerned.
All right, please stay on with me. Shiv Aroor, Gaurav Sawant, Rahul Srivastav joining us with all the latest. And Gaurav, because you're there in Ladakh, you're tracking the ground situation. Very clearly, Rajnath Singh saying transgression was attempted, we retaliated and we responded with timely action. Do you think, as you also said, China will be tracking all the words that was spoken by the Defence Minister and clearly making it very clear from the government side, we are not going to take it now, we are going to respond. But do you see this as a strong statement today by the Minister?
It's a statement of fact, it's a statement of intent, where the defense minister says that we want peace, but we are ready for any eventuality. That's a very, very significant statement for the defense minister of India to make. And at a time when he said he's already said this to General Feng He, his Chinese counterpart, when the Chinese defense minister, incidentally, sought 3 meetings with our defense minister when they finally met in Moscow. And then again, this was followed by a meeting between Dr. S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, and the Chinese External Affairs Minister, Wang Yi. Now, this is where the crucial detail lies, because as the Defense Minister said, if China follows those 5 principles agreed to between Wang Yi and S. Jaishankar, then there will be peace and disengagement. But can India trust China on ground? We've interacted with top commanders who are very clear that there is a big build-up across the line of actual control. Chinese are building permanent defenses, and that is why, you know, in a couple of hours from now, you will see India Today's report about how India is also responding in terms of logistics build up in this area, and that's extremely critical. It's not just occupying those heights, but also ensuring that those heights are well provided for in terms of arms, ammunition, food, winter clothing, and a supply chain which very significantly includes fuel that troops will require in that area. So all of those logistics, winter stocking, that's happening round the clock, and we've been seeing that every day. There are trucks, there are aircraft that are bringing in so many resources. We are going to be deployed through the winters here. Even though China may talk of disengagement, we need to see that action on ground.
All right, I request all 3 of you to stay on. Take a look at that. Our National Affairs Editor Rahul Srivastav, Shiv Aroor, Gaurav Sawant, our senior most colleagues, they know exactly, they've been tracking respectively in politics and defense. Shiv, what is the biggest takeaway, do you think, from this speech today? It must be viewed internationally. It would be quoted globally. What do you think will be the biggest takeaway?
I have a very, very specific takeaway, because if you look at the content of what Rajnath Singh said, Pooja, you know, there was nothing extraordinary about it. You know, one would have expected a statement of this kind. I am reading much more into the tone and the tonality. Rajnath Singh, you know, I have had a chance to interact with him before. You know, all of us have met him as well. He is a politician who weighs his words very, very carefully. His body language is always very equanimous. What I saw today was Rajnath Singh who is in a sense exasperated. There seems to be not just a sense of disappointment, but a sense of anger, exasperation, one of being fed up. And you know, there is a combative tone that has come into what he is saying, and that is not something that you see very often. I'm not talking about how people are during election campaigns. I'm talking about right now in an operational scenario. And remember, he is the Raksha Mantri. He is the defense minister. The buck stops with him when it comes to the armed forces. Therefore, I think I would interpret this as what was initially a sense of hope that you know, there would be some kind of samadhan, some kind of you know, possibility of resolving the situation through talks, has now hit a wall, Pooja. Lieutenant generals have spoken, major generals have spoken, 2 ministry level interactions have happened, and I think a sense of despondence has sunk in about the reality on the ground in Ladakh. Therefore, the footnote at the end of what he said was, we are committed to peace, but we are prepared for any eventuality, and the armed forces will protect us. But this was an angry Rajnath, and you don't see that very often.
And also very balanced statement coming in, putting forth the government view. Rahul, how do you see this politically? Do you think this was timely? It's come on the 2nd day as the monsoon session begins. The opposition had been asking for it. Do you think this was timely? We have state elections coming up, all of it. It is a political issue as well. How do you see this comment via the opposition, via the government?